Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel and video game news. Today is Friday, December 30th, so we only have 2 more days until it's the new year. So yeah, not a lot is going on, certainly. I've been, for the accountability section, I played a little bit more of Kirby and the Forgotten Land. I probably went from about 70% done to, it says 75% done, although I think I probably will burn through the next part that's after the credits fairly quickly. I suspect there might be another part that happens even after that, and that there's just this weird level in which you are you're given something completely different after you do the current thing in Kirby and the Forgotten Lands. Mostly I'm running around collecting pieces of a soul, whereas before I was freeing waddles, and it's basically the same thing except for there's just no hints now, and you're going through re-edited versions of the same levels you've already seen, with a lot of the content in the middle, the slower sections, edited it out. So it's just like, here's alternate versions of the world that they probably were thinking about doing, and then they got feedback saying these are too hard, so let's make an easier version, and then the difficult versions are ending up later in the game. But there is some weirdness in the fact that you do the first like arena tournament, and then you can't really do another arena tournament for a while, or it feels like you probably would have wanted to do an arena fight, then another arena fight, then another arena fight, have 2 or 3 of them unlocked as soon as the arena was unlocked, which the arena isn't even unlocked until you're deep into that first 70% of the game. I didn't accomplish as much. Part of it is that there's not a huge amount pulling me to Kirby and the Forgotten Land, so I'm not heavily motivated to play it, but it's nowhere as bad as Zelda Breath of the Wild, where Breath of the Wild was just grindy. Inherently, Breath of the Wild, with its climbing mechanic that is kind of exhausting if you're not into it, and its weapon destruction that's kind of exhausting if you're not into it. There are some kind of grindy elements that just aren't in Kirby and the Forgotten Land, since it's a much easier kids game. But there is just not a lot of positive either in Kirby and the Forgotten Land if you're not into what you are getting, which is good enough. It's just I play for a couple hours and then take a break and play for a couple hours. Meanwhile, the main thing I've been doing is I got my Christmas lights after Christmas on sale, and I've been trying to figure out if I can get them to work. Inherently, what the goal is that at the moment we are at a cutting edge. I think like this would be the first year to buy smart Christmas lights, to even think that such a thing as Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, Zigbee type, and honestly I've only seen Wi-Fi, Wi-Fi smart Christmas lights would be a thing. And why would you want smart Christmas lights? Because it potentially, depending on how the software is programmed, will allow you to change the color and patterns enough where it starts to make some sense to have Christmas lights up year round. You put them up once, you have them up for several years. Maybe there's a windstorm every couple of years that pulls a couple down, and you have to adjust the plastic clips to hang them back up. Or if you go really crazy and nail them into the roof, not through the wires obviously, but with a hook type piece of plastic holder, that would be semi-permanent. Up until this point, the solution has been buy a lot of expensive aluminum channels, put sticker backed LED strips on your roof, put a diffuser over the aluminum channels. They come with the diffuser. And then mount that with screws on the underside of your roof, your awning. And on top of doing all of that, run a massive amount of power, because unless you're going to have a significantly small number of LEDs on your strip, it's not going to be small enough. There is this gap. It's not a huge gap between like 1/3 of an inch between LEDs that would be on an LED Christmas light, the smart Christmas light, and probably what's the widest LEDs I've seen? Well, I don't know what the widest I've seen is, because I haven't looked at it too much, but generally speaking, LED strips have the LEDs almost right next to each other. The ones I bought, definitely for my Lego table, definitely are that. The LEDs are just right next to each other. There's nowhere close to it, maybe a 64th of an inch between each LED. You could probably get wider ones that would go almost as close to 1/3 of an inch. And there are definitely some smart lighting solutions that you really wouldn't call Christmas lights, that are a foot apart per LED, which is a little too little. But by having Christmas lights generally accepted to be fairly far apart compared to an LED strip, you don't need as much power. It becomes much more reasonable. So we're right on the verge of this. That being said, I will start by saying, having worked on it yesterday, I do not recommend anybody jump the gun quite yet. Almost certainly in the next 2 or 3 years, you will have longer smart Christmas lights, whereas the ones that I've gotten to work are about 75 feet. So to cover just the front of my house, basically I need 2 strands coming out of a plug through a window, which the wires are thin enough to do this, where you can actually just cram the wire around the cushioning of a window and be comfortable like this, where you couldn't do that with just a regular outlet extension thing, power plug. These wires are pretty small, but yeah, it's just long enough. What I got at a decent price of $25 for 75 feet, so $5 a foot, which is not super cheap by any means, but not super expensive either for a smart project. But yeah, I'm gonna have 2 coming out of a window that's in the middle of my house, and they're gonna meet in a corner, and one's gonna go to the left, one's going to go to the right, and hopefully whatever sequences it's programmed to do will look good enough there. Now, what I had originally purchased, and here's where I spent most of my time and was very dissatisfied with the result, although I still think I'll end up with a pretty positive outcome. What I originally got were some Christmas lights that are not smart. They have an infrared controller, remote control, and a controller box, but that's it. There's 12, frankly, pretty awful patterns programmed into these LEDs, and they say they are white or multicolor LEDs. Now, after working with it, taking apart a broken controller, I bought 2 strands that were like 300 feet. So there's a massive difference there. I think I paid $50 for 300 feet, whereas the smart ones I paid $25 for 75 feet. So there is clearly an extra cost there. But I was really expecting this whole project to be minimum $200 or $300, and it really isn't that expensive. Although I'm not really getting the final thing. I wanted the entire house to be wrapped in lights, and the limitation of finding smart lights that are only like Tuya based, that are only like 75 feet, limits it to just the front of the house. Although frankly, front of the house is probably all you really care about. Yeah, and in my case that means the high peaks in the valleys of the roof are on the side of the house anyways, depending on how your house is facing and how the roof is constructed. So the highest points where you might need a ladder to climb are just being completely ignored, and I'm just not putting any lights on them. So if I was slightly more confident in my own ability to simply climb a ladder, I could easily put up these lights myself. Most difficult part would be simply a peak above my garage, which is still wouldn't really be that difficult. Of course, it is very silly to be putting up Christmas lights after Christmas. But whatever. These are going to be year-round lights. They're going to be used every day as just supplemental lighting. There's programming issues, certainly still, in that Tuya does not really have a calendar system or a day trigger. You can trigger based on sunrise and sundown, but you cannot trigger based on December 1st. So, and the lights I got, by the way, don't seem like they're particularly the best program, so I'm not sure I could really even change. I'll have to play with it more to see if I can even really change the functions in which mode it is by a schedule. But as it stands, that just means that I can program it to come on and before sunset and go off after sunrise, and then when you want to change the actual program it's doing, you just have to manually, whenever there's a season, change the lights to something different, and that just kind of means play with it. So yeah, the 75 foot Tuya lights are working perfectly. I took apart the controller hoping that I could put the controller on the 300 foot light strand. If I had been able to do that, I would have had enough lights to go all the way around my house in one continuous chain. That being said, it didn't work out. The Tuya lights, and here's the trick I'm going to tell everybody to be extremely careful with, have 3 wires. And a smart addressable LED is almost certainly going to have 3 or 4 wires, maybe even 5. What it definitely is unlikely to have and actually be smart addressable LEDs is just 2 wires. The 300 strands that are white or multicolor are 2 wires, and they run off of 29 volts, not 5 volts like the Tuya lights. So inherently, what I think after just taking it apart and trying to remember as much electronics as I possibly can remember, there, I think the LEDs in the longer 29 volt setup are actually 2 diodes in one, and they are diodes that point in the opposite direction, and they may have some kind of chip in them, but it's not the right kind of chip that an LED controller is likely to be able to control it. I tried to use an LED controller on it, and I probably broke the LED controller putting 29 volts into something that was more expecting 5 volts. I think the way the 29 volt colored multicolored works is that there's one diode that points one way that's always white, and then there's a diode that points in the opposite direction that is one of 3 colors. So it's multicolored, but it doesn't have a red, green, blue value in it. It's white, and then in this case this single LED bulb will do green, and then they'll put the next one will be red, and then the next one will be blue, and then they'll just keep cycling in that way, where there is just a cost reduction cheapness there, which, yeah, cheap Chinese products, obviously they're going to try and cost reduce it as much as possible. And because it's 2-wire, and because I suspect that's how it works, I think the trick there is that it is very fast, faster than the human eye can see, putting 29 volts a positive 29 volts on one of the wires, and then that will make all of the bulbs light up white, because the white LEDs would get that voltage, and then very quickly it will switch, if you want the colored diodes, to negative 29 volts. And honestly, it doesn't even have to be that quickly, because you can't really do the pure white and the color at the same time anyways. You would just be blinking them, so actually fairly slowly. And if it wants to dim, it reduces the amount of voltage on the LEDs, I'm sure. But these 300 strand 29 volt bulbs, their controller only has 175, 50, and 25% dimness. So there's just an incredible lack of control. It's not even the dimness that's the biggest problem, it's the fact that the patterns are terrible. There's maybe 2 or 3 patterns you actually want to use, and it's all controllable via an infrared remote control that it only works 10 feet away. They're good enough, certainly, if you were going to just stand at your window and point a remote control outside and turn it on every night. But it's not even like radio frequency controlled, so it's the cheapest of the cheap. But yeah, there was no way after a while, and it took me a lot of time to realize this, and I hope I'm accurate on this. There just seems like there's no way whatsoever to light up these LEDs and get a different color out of them, so they're just not addressable LEDs. In all fairness, you probably won't get a controller. Even the shorter 3-wire 2-ya LEDs that I'm going with, you're really not getting individually addressable programming so much. It's the 2-ya app is not programmed that well, where you can say, I want bulb 1 on this strand to be this color, and bulb 2 on this strand to be another color. Theoretically, you could maybe get a better controller, cut the wires and connect them, since there is a standardization there. But just out of the box, these 2-ya 75-foot ones with 3 wires work good. They're not the best looking LEDs anyways. The ones that definitely are striving to more look like the old-fashioned Christmas lights definitely look more like old-fashioned Christmas lights, whereas the 2-ya LEDs are more just a wire connected to a blob of plastic that's over a LED that very possibly was just on an LED strip at some point to another wire. So it looks It's extremely low profile, extremely not that good looking. It definitely would be better to have it hang tight under the underhang and light an area more than to try to have it hang down on a loop where the lights would be a prominent element there. And generally these lights are designed to be wrapped around a Christmas tree, and I'm putting them under a roof, so I'm doing something slightly different with them. Alright, well, this is gonna really suck. Like, I immediately have to go to the bathroom again. I had just gone to the bathroom. We have Orinx the Wendigo saying hello, and we have someone with an Asian lettering saying hello on the chat. And I don't even think I'm gonna be able to stay in the game, so yeah, I guess I'll just let this surrender. I'm gonna pause the recording, and apologies for this. I'll be back in a few minutes. Okay, I'm back. That sucked, to say the least. Apologies for that. That was much more of a prolonged break than I had expected it would have been. And this is just another great example of how people with IBS, unlikely to succeed as a YouTube live streamer, at least. There is a YouTuber I follow that has like Crohn's disease, and he just had to have an entire surgery and is unlikely to make any new content in at least 4 weeks, I would say, is what he was suggesting. So it definitely can be worse, but the idea of having to be somewhere at a specific time to be considered effective in live jobs just does not work with people that have IBS. I mean, it just doesn't. It's kind of an unfair idea in some cases and kind of a fair idea in some other cases. The problem mostly comes down to the business owner, the management of some level is creating the schedules, whereas the work from home movement really has shown that a lot of jobs could get done. The actual work can get done at any time within the average amount of time that you're spending. Some jobs it doesn't make so much sense. Like, if all call centers, for instance, were required to be 24/7 staffed and 24/7 opened, which is an interesting law certainly to pass, to say you can't do business in the United States unless you have a 24-hour helpline that goes to an actual person. Even in that case, it's highly unlikely that you would need as many staff members in the times between like 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. as you would 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. or even 6 a.m. to 3 or 4 in the afternoon, which would be closer to an 8-hour shift. But yeah, if you're a computer programmer, you can work pretty much at any time. Sure, there will be some meetings that you might want to get. You might want to get the whole team on the same page, and at that point there needs to be some overlap, but that's kind of it. And if you're an individual programmer, you don't have to have meetings with other programmers to keep people on the same page. But yeah, many jobs definitely are stupidly built around the standard schedule of 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. starting, 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. ending, when that doesn't really accomplish anything. And many jobs honestly just have considerably little going on for them. Anyways, where you can just kind of sit around and do nothing for 3 out of every 7-hour or 8-hour period, a day, because there's just not that much work to start with. And that's part of the reason why I personally am capable of doing YouTube and not really that capable of doing anything else, is that any kind of 9-to-5 type job, which is going to require just being there and regulating bathroom breaks. It's ridiculous any job regulates bathroom breaks at all. And I'll get off this rant anyways, but like, it's ridiculous that even high schools are telling kids they can't go to the bathroom whenever they want. Like, just let them go. If they're going to go smoke in the bathrooms, have a whole monitor near the bathroom that say, "Hey, I'm smelling vapes or cigarettes," something like that. If they're going to just skip class by going to the bathroom, just let them skip class. Like, there is an odd factor in the United States high school that once you get into that junior senior level of high school, they pretty much bend over backwards to push people to graduating from high school, when there is just a level of, for lack of a better term, delinquents that should just like skip out and stop attending classes. And they totally let you do that if you are getting a job or getting a GED, but they hide those options mostly. Right, well, I think what we have to do here is summon this. Yeah, I think I've lost. I don't think there's anything I can do that will let me get past this point. Because you activate this, and then his ability probably won't activate. Right. You can't cancel this. Yeah, so I've lost. But yeah, IBS sucks, certainly. Random frequent needs to go to the bathroom. So for the accountability section, now that we're technically like 50 minutes into the stream, or let's see how long we are into the recording. 28 minutes into the recording. Yeah, I would heavily, to recap, not recommend doing anything as far as smart Christmas lights this year, unless you just absolutely want Christmas lights, which that is inherently the thing, is that if you want Christmas lights, you probably want Christmas lights, and there's probably a few more days you could get some smart Tuya Christmas lights. The 75-foot ones that I own at a brand with 3 wires is what I would recommend, because that seems like that really works. But yeah, if you could wait next year, it'll be better. If you can wait the next year, it'll be even better. The year-round aspect certainly is what added quite an appeal to that, because it really isn't worth it to either spend the extra effort or pay somebody to hang up Christmas lights and then take them down and hang them up, or just to leave them around year-round and then not light them, because they it would just be weird to be in the middle of July and have red and green lights or white Christmas lights lit up. If you have regular Christmas lights and they're already lit up, there are definitely at least 1-2 smart outdoor outlets, or you could risk it and run just an indoor smart socket plug in there. If you can get a dimmable plug that adds dimming to a light strand that probably doesn't have dimming, if you get just a regular on-off plug, then you can schedule on and off there. That's not any real difference from just having a regular old-fashioned timer where you program a time and program it on and off, other than there's just no need to have potentially a battery extra in a plug-in outlet timer to keep the clock running if the power goes out, which you probably don't even need that, really. I bet a lot of them don't have batteries these days. So yeah, it definitely jumps a threshold between here's a plug that can turn something on and off like a lamp, and putting in a smart red, green, blue LED into that same lamp, and then having the bulb itself, the smart bulb, be dimmable, be controllable, change the colors in the rare occasion you might want to change the colors. Arguably the red, green, blue aspect is not even probably what you want in a lot of scenarios. You probably want a more adjustable brightness in color tone, whether it's warm or cool or neutral white light, more than you would want than you would want red, green, blue, because the red, green, blue actually is really just for party modes. And that is one thing I am going to try, is to see if I can find different kinds of smart LEDs to potentially get ones that don't lose connection as much as possible, as much as the ones I have do. Ones I have now, that they're struggling at a distance that they really shouldn't be struggling to maintain connection, but that may also be in my network, which I also tweaked my network a little bit. I noticed specifically that Windows is trying to do a multicast IP signal like crazy on my network, it's part of Windows basically torrenting Windows updates, which would make sense if you had multiple Windows computers on your network, but I don't. And it's just making a lot of connections, and I was just trying to reduce the amount of connections possible. I also one of my devices is trying to broadcast on the wrong address, it seems like, for universal plug and play, which is weird. So I'm trying to adjust that also. But yeah, basically what I'm trying to do is stop some devices that once they try to establish a connection, they just keep on trying to establish connections. And inherently it is bad programming that has caused a lot of the degradation of the internet, in that there are just devices that go, oh, I can't connect to Google, let me try to connect to Google again, let me try again, let me try again, let me try again, just over and over again. And a router only has so much CPU power, only so much RAM. When you have more and more devices just always trying to call home, always wasting bandwidth, it's no surprise that the internet has not improved as much as it should have. And instead, all we can really do And most people without custom firmware on their routers, all they can really do is just pay for more internet and get brute force their way out of network traffic storms that are just being made by bad programming. Yeah. So do I have anything else as far as the accountability section? Kirby and the Forgotten Land, still playing that. I may have as... It's funny because I have as little to say today myself as there is actual video game news to say also. So I don't show the YouTube, the Amazon Prime gaming very much. They generally are always just giving kind of garbage games that are alright, but they're all in this own launcher that I don't think I've ever even launched. So here they're giving away some free games that aren't terrible. But then they give away a lot of things that are on third-party launchers, but never Steam. They used to do Steam at the very beginning, and then they stopped doing Steam. And then they give away a bunch of Candy Crush, in this case, like in-app purchases type things that you really shouldn't be playing Candy Crush in the first place because it's just a cheating, addictive game. Genshin Impact. It's all very mobile. It's all very trying to be somewhat trendy more than anything. Here's a Madden bundle. I generally just skip past all of these bundles because, like, none of them are good. There were some Hearthstone ones that sometimes show up. This might be Hearthstone, but I don't even play Hearthstone anymore, so I wouldn't bother. It'd be nice if there was some Magic the Gathering like tie-in here, but that would be about the only kind of mobile type game that you would want. And then most of these games you probably already have, or it's DLC for games you probably don't have. But one thing to mention here is that there's this Mom Hid My Game, which is a Nintendo Switch game, and notice there is not even an icon in the corner to point out Nintendo Switch. This, I think, is the first Nintendo Switch game to be released on Amazon Prime, which that is definitely a different twist, certainly, as far as what Amazon Prime, since you already probably own Amazon Prime, would be offering. And it might be a better offering, honestly. Right. As far as the Epic Games Store, Dishonored Definitive Edition and Eximus Season 3 is available from now to January 5th. So the 13 free games have been stopped, and this is just more your standard. Every couple of weeks we're going to give a free game. And yeah, I'm pretty sure I already have grabbed both of these, and they are in my library. Since I decided to do Christmas lights, I am gonna just skip doing any shopping as far as the winter Steam sale, which, yeah, okay, I'm happy with that. I don't need more Steam games at the moment. I'm not happy with what's going on here. Clearly the meta has changed enough that my my Zodiac Tri-Brigade deck has lost the ability to win. And honestly, we just don't have enough time to make it to platinum again. Seems like I am balancing out and just being doomed to specifically only have a mid-tier gold level deck in Yu-Gi-Oh! And that I probably won't make platinum on a monthly basis. I could definitely make platinum on a monthly basis if they would stop doing all the extra festivals and extra things you have to do. This feels like this is a whole different background that I've never even seen. They've made too many of these, honestly. Like, it's nice that they're visually different. I don't like the merging, certainly, though, of different players with different realms. I know that is shown in, like, the first season of the anime, that the field spells would really do that, but it would make a lot more sense, honestly, if you played a field spell and then it would then change the field instead of just having these purchasable side art backgrounds. And certainly when you're playing on mobile, you probably don't see any of this, so it's just going to be so small. This guy's wrecking me. So yeah, Video Games Chronicles is still not really doing any work as it is. So we have an article that we've already covered with the Smash Bros. Director's Masahiro Sakurai saying he's semi-retired. The boss teases more Sonic the Hedgehog games in 2023. January's PlayStation Plus Essential Games being confirmed, which I guess is Jedi Fallen Order, Fallout 76, and Axiom Verge. And then an image claims to show a special Zelda Tears of the Kingdom OLED Switch Edition, which, yeah, that's very believable. Since I've gotten away from listening to the Giant Bombcast, I've been trying to find other sources of people talking about video games, and one of the ones I've been giving a chance is the Nintendo podcast, not Nintendo, N-O-N, and they only talk about Nintendo, if they barely even do that. And so they had predictions for what's going to happen next year that they went through as far as Nintendo, and they feel, and I'm just going to repeat them without really having an opinion myself because I don't follow Nintendo game releases that much, but they feel like there's not a lot of first party title games coming out in 2023. I feel like the Breath of the Wild sequel, Tears of the Kingdom, may have been slightly delayed again or once, and so it may not even come out in 2023, or it may get rushed out to 2023 and be about the only first party title in 2023, as they're, I think, we're looking towards either a Christmas 2023 announcement of whatever the Switch 2 is going to be, or a announcement around 2025 and release early after Christmas of 2024, not 5. The Switch is weak. It has to really just be pointed out. It was weak when it launched on day one. It's only 5 years weaker now, even if it hasn't been out for 5 years. It needs something more than just the OLED update to it, for sure. Now, is the part shortage issue going to be addressed in 2023 or 2024? Maybe not, but honestly, the technology in the Switch was pretty old to begin with, so even a incremental update is very doable for the Nintendo Switch. If they just took the standard chips that were going to be in a Motorola phone or a Samsung phone, or even the M1 or M2 chips that are in Apple phones, if they just took one of those and said this is going to be the foundation of our Switch 2, and as such we're going to have basically an iPhone or an Android phone processor in our Switch 2 that is going to then have a bunch of skinning on it to make it look more like a Nintendo console, but really it's just a cell phone on the inside. That would probably make it even easier for them to get parts in the first place. But yeah, there's definitely ARM chips out there that are more prevalent, bigger, and better than what the Switch has. I'm not even sure what the Switch has because it is kind of its own custom hardware, and I don't know if there is any value at this point of there being any custom hardware in a Switch 2. It really should just be a smartphone that potentially could be a very good chip compared to like a $1,500 or $2,000 original cost cell phone, because you can just subsidize that with a requirement of always online, which I wouldn't be surprised if they did something like that where you have to pay the subscription to do pretty much anything. Or you can subsidize it with a markup in game prices, because almost certainly if Xbox and PlayStation are going up to $70, Nintendo is going to try to go up to $70 in the price of their games on the Switch 2 also. On some levels, I still suspect the Switch 2 would be incredibly cheap and plasticky and just not anywhere close to what a Steam Deck is trying to be. But if anybody was going to rip off the Steam Deck or try to do even better than the Steam Deck, it would make sense that it would be Nintendo, because they could legitimately make the argument, well, we invented the Switch first and the Steam Deck ripped off the Switch. It wouldn't be terrible if a Switch 2 had some kind of cell phone SIM card or eSIM in it, probably not even a SIM card slot, so that there was some kind of always online mobile connection to it. I doubt they want to put a phone functionality in it, just because parents would be iffy about that, but they do want to push everybody to online and potentially even get into more microtransactions. I still would much prefer for a Switch 2 to actually just be a base station that was like an Xbox Series S. Yeah, honestly, it doesn't even need a disc. It'd be nice if it had a disc drive, but if it just had a USB connector and you just wirelessly transferred data via a switch to a base, and then the base played it at a higher frame rate, that would be interesting. It'd be weird, certainly, to put a game in a Switch and then the Switch itself being the controller for a base station. It would make more sense for them to just go with discs. Like, discs are still the cheapest thing out there. I doubt they'd ever want to just have USB thumb drives have games on them. There's kind of no reason for that. It could be just micro SD cards though, or SD cards instead of proprietary connectors, but they don't want people having an easy time stealing or making ROMs off of the games. I guess making ROMs is the right term there. And speaking of not wanting people to make ROMs, some kind of security exploit is being updated for a bunch of old Nintendo games that I assume is in part a way of jailbreaking or making ROMs or playing ROMs on old consoles from the 3DS. Moving on with the news, I don't think today's going to be a particularly long stream, honestly. Komatsu has a few more articles. Castle of Shikigami 2 for Switch launches April 13th. Dokapon Kingdom Connected has been rated for the Switch in Germany. This looks like kind of a Mario Party type game. I assume 0 means general audience. Yeah. Little Noah Scion of Paradise, 4th major update, launches in early 2023 and adds, I need to play, Zipper as a playable character. So you have this like cat you can play as. Little Noah feels like a game I have seen before, but I really couldn't tell you anything about it. Looks like it's a platforming game of some sort. Platforming hack and slash game. Yep. So I guess what you basically could say about it, though, without knowing anything else, is that it's nice that they're still supporting the game and adding more content to it. We already talked about the Inazuma 11 Victory Road of Heroes having a new soccer game system video and new artwork. We talked about this in the last stream. This is the game I thought had already been released, but apparently hasn't. PlayStation Plus lineup we already talked about. Yeah, Axiom Verge 2, Fallout 76, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Kingdom, Fallen Order. A game called We Are the Caretakers launches January 6th for Xbox Series and PC. If I'm remembering correctly, this is the one where you're like supposed to take care of animals or be the guardians of animals, and it kind of has this like weird alien, almost Native American First Tribes feeling to it, but the actual game definitely looks like it is just a turn-based XCOM type experience. It just looks frankly weird. It could be a good game. A lot of weird games definitely have this situation where can't do anything with this character. Yeah, you have a weird situation when you have weird looking games, in that they very well could be niche favorites, but they have to have some level of intrigue at the start of it for you to play it. And We Are the Caretakers doesn't really strike me as a game that's really that intriguing to start with, so I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people don't bother to ever play it, even if it is a decent experience. Komatsu says RPG Maker Unite has some details for custom expansions, which this shows how the sausage is made for a lot of these low effort RPG Maker asset flips games. And it looks a lot like Unity and Unreal. I think they all kind of look very similar to Blender if anything, when you just have bars on the bottom, left and right, and usually some bars at the top here. But the main problem is that even though this looks fairly complicated, it's still a little too simple, and there's a little too many people that already know how to take a RPG Maker project and just change a few things and make a low effort RPG Maker game. In general, I think a big problem too is people just don't want a top-down, pixely, super zoomed out RPG game at all. Those are things of the past. Those are things that make sense for Final Fantasy 1, 2, and 3 back when they were on the NES. They don't make any sense in 2023. They never will make sense in the future. Doesn't matter how good your story is, how good the cutscenes are, doesn't matter how good the audio is. Your gameplay mechanic is turn-based action in almost all of them, which is slow and grindy, and there are far too many good versions of RPGs out there that look way better. And the graphics, on average, are going to look terrible because of the pixely zoomed out imagery, where there's far better examples of particularly JRPGs that look way better too. And there have been examples of those types of games that were better for years and years and years. Fallout 3 is probably 20 years old at this point, if not maybe 15. Fallout 3 looks way better than an RPG Maker game. It plays way better because it's an action-based game with hiding a turn-based mechanic if you want to use it. And yeah, the story and the writing is pretty good in Fallout 3, where it's never that good in RPG Maker experiences. I just think there's probably less than 20 people on the entire planet that are so autistic that they actually like the way RPG Maker games come out and play that way and play them all. Like the Pokemon is kind of a great example of a formulaic RPG game that I can almost excuse because of rabid fandom around Pokemon that you would play every single version of every single Pokemon game and basically have an RPG Maker experience. But when you're buying random RPG Maker games from random people that aren't even in a series and there's no real fandom around it, it just doesn't make any sense at all. Moving on, Gamatsu Project The Perceiver has a 45-minute developer gameplay introductory video, which I think this is probably the first I've heard of this. This definitely looks like this is another one of these Chinese games set in a feudal China. Maybe it's a Japanese game set in a feudal Japan. It doesn't look bad. A lot of the games like Neo have definitely opened the door up to Asian companies being willing to tell Asian stories instead of trying to localize themselves. Ironically, it's kind of the exact opposite of what's happening in many other parts of Japanese and Chinese game developers' attitudes, in that for many years, particularly in the NES era, you would have the let's de-Asianify feeling around games, and take what would be more historical feudal era type games and put completely different names on people, completely different skins. Let's even when you go back to something that's relatively new like The Evil Within 1, there's definitely an Asian skin for the main character if you play the Asian version of The Evil Within, and then there is a Western white person skin of the character. And I think even some of the Resident Evil games are kind of in that same way. where they just slightly changed the way the faces look. Yeah, and it's created certainly this weird scenario where if you were going to do ninjas, it was more like Senran Kagura, where it's joke anime girl ninjas, because anime is cool. It's not, oh, let's do something that's somewhat historically accurate looking. Like, it's kind of ridiculous that there is not a Rurouni Kenshin video game series out there, where back when that was really popular. Although Rurouni Kenshin is kind of a great example, because as an anime, when it first was sold and advertised, it was advertised as Samurai X, and they totally just changed the whole name of the show, which happened a lot in anime. In fact, the improper translation of anime has always been a major point of conflict amongst anime fans. But it is still, we're in this weird position where when you get these like more feudal Japan type realistic games, it's still not 100% realistic, because it's still going to have that level of censorship. You're not going to see, for instance, Japanese rice farming ladies topless planting rice, as was kind of historically accurate, I believe. Like, well, you're not going to see the fact that underwear was just not a thing that even existed in Japan until it was brought over by the British, the UK Empire. So those elements will be conveniently forgotten, as many other elements like brutality and gore will be completely forgotten. And so it does create this weird situation where you are going to still have a somewhat censored depiction. Yeah, there's, I believe, I don't know, I've never actually sat through Schindler's List, but I believe there's a point in Schindler's List where you see the Jews in a concentration camp, and they're just extremely skinny, and they're just like naked women all around, because they just don't have clothes. In 2023, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a push to censor that out and edit those sections out. There's a famous real photograph of a little girl who's been napalmed, and her skin is basically burning off and melting, and all of her clothes is burnt off, and that's a very historically relevant and accurate image, and yet I bet there's probably a push to censor that too. Do we want 100% realism in video games? No, but I'd like the content creators to be able to do that if they wanted to, and I feel like they still are under pressure to censor towards a Western mentality. Here's where I'm gonna wrap up what have been trying to say for 5 minutes. They seem to be under a lot of pressure to censor towards a Western mentality, yet they have been released with one hand people censor, and with the other hand they've perhaps said they've freed up the reins to do more of a traditional story. Now, inherently, the problem here, and most of this playthrough here, is just them jumping around on the rooftop, so obviously this level's not very big. The problem you're also going to run into is that if this is a Chinese game, and even if it isn't, even if it's a Japanese game, the Chinese movie and Chinese traditional value push through censorship through the Chinese government is extremely, extremely high. So we may very well, while I could say 2023 might be the year of feudal era Asian games really coming into their own and becoming a new genre, almost like pirates or cowboys used to be a genre that were really popular. I could see feudal era Asian games being popular. 2023 may be that year, but by 2024 there might be too many of them for my taste. And yeah, you see this definitely in Chinese movies, in that if you're going to try to watch any movie made for China or in China, it's 100% always ancient China, feudal era China, propaganda, traditional values Chinese movies. They don't make sci-fi movies that there's no Star Trek equivalent, because they don't want to show a potential futuristic China that's evolved past its current values in any ways. And yeah, they just are a bunch of old people that like old content and like that are in charge of censoring games and movies and all forms of entertainment. And there's only so many times where you can have a vague analogy of Romance of the 12 Kingdoms or the Monkey King stories being told over and over and over again. So yeah, by 2024 these games may be so abundant that it's actually annoying. Moving on, the Famitsu sales have been updated between the 19th and the 25th. Let's see if we've got anything new. Fitness Boxing Fist of the North Star edition is new, and it sold 17,000 units, which put it in 13th space. I guess the real question you'd want to look at here is, since this is right before Christmas, this would be the depth of Christmas shopping, are these numbers particularly high? I wouldn't say really that high. Obviously not a lot was released in that time period. Earth Defense Force 4.1 selling 8,000 units, putting it in 23rd space. There is one PS4 game in the 20th spot, and otherwise every single game on this, well, no, there's a PS5 in the 18th spot. So 2 PlayStation games out of 30. Everything else is on Nintendo Switch, and yet the hardware sales for the OLED model is not particularly higher than the PlayStation 5 model, but when you add the Switch Lite into this, and I guess the Nintendo Switch didn't sell any units at all. Have they just stopped selling the Switch? No, here it is. Add the Switch Lite, add the Switch together, you've got another 70,000, which easily is 150,000, nearly 3 times as many units of Switches in general being sold compared to PlayStation 5. If you add PlayStation 4 into it, it's nothing. If you add the digital version of the PlayStation 5, it's nothing. The Switch is hardware-wise still winning incredibly high, and so is it in software sales. So inherently this does tell Nintendo that if they are going to make a Switch 2, it probably is going to be a small incremental improvement and nothing that big. I wouldn't be surprised if they just make a Switch 2 and call it a different model and continue down this idea. Switch OLED 2 Model 2 or something like that. And it is just slightly more powerful. I wouldn't be surprised if it barely does anything different. Xbox still not selling basically nothing in Japan, but it isn't as low as it has been. There definitely have been periods in which the Xbox has sold 10, 20 units. So for them to even sell 700 units is a big number, but you just have to look at the jump up of lifetime sales between 7 million versus the Series X selling 172,000 or 225,000 units. They're clearly aren't selling Xboxes in Japan, and not sure what they really could do to convince Japanese people to buy Xboxes. Let's see. The smartphone game, Is It Wrong to Try to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon? Familia Myth Battle Chronicle has been announced for iOS and Android. This is based on an anime/manga series with a super long title. Actually, I believe it's probably a light novel series, because it's the light novel series that likes to make these incredibly long titles. In the series, the main character, I believe, is this, and then there's this kind of low-level goddess character here that is kind of a romantic interest that is trying to grow a bigger harem of followers, or a group of followers, I guess, to make her a more powerful goddess by having more worshippers and followers. Generally, I know, actually, I think this girl is actually the girl that's he's more interested in. And then I only watched a little bit of the anime, so like I know this character and maybe this character, and then these characters maybe, but definitely a lot of these characters were added later. It's just a longer and longer series of characters, and you can see each has a lot of voice actors. Probably a lot of them are famous Japanese voice actors. This ribbon bra concept was fad for a brief while in lewd cosplay, in which a ribbon is just being tied around your shoulders, and then somehow magically it acts as a bra to lift up your fairly large breasts, although it really doesn't work. Wouldn't work that way at all. You would have to tie a different kind of knot around it to have any kind of real support there, and you'd have to give up a lot of freedom of moving your arms back and forth. It's clearly something that a male animator thought about, that this would be funny if we did this, and it would stand out and be unique, and it would give us an excuse to have a lot of boob jiggle every time they move. Moving on, let's just keep on burning through this. I'm gonna lose here. I don't even know if I really want to even bother to play anymore today. Like, I started late today, took an extended bathroom break. It's probably better just to give this up and call it a day. Let's see. Yeah. Activate a trap card, fusion summon, link summon one more thing. Yes, give it one more game, and then I think I want to call it a day. As far as playing Yu-Gi-Oh! We fell down one rank, we probably won't get back up. The Xbox Live free games for January have been announced, and yeah, that doesn't seem like a lot in particular. Xbox Live Gold getting just Iris Fall, Xbox Game Pass Ultimate just getting Autumn mods, it seems like. No, I guess maybe both games are available for both. That's a very bad offering for people who potentially just got an Xbox. But it may make a lot of sense too, because if you did just get an Xbox and you had Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, you probably still got some disc-based games that you want to play, or some games that you would also want to catch up on anyways. So, yeah. Particularly in Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, though, that would be the time to say, hey, during the slump of January and February when no new games are coming out, let's release some good games and get our name out there and convince people to have a good experience with Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, so that they stay subscribed to it after a free month. I assume you get a free month if you buy Series X on Xbox Game Pass Gold or Ultimate. I'm not even sure what you really get, or if you get anything for free. I think you get Gold for a month at least for free, which I think that is probably better than what the Nintendo Switch offers, which I think is basically a 7-day free pass. Let's see, Stalker 2, Heart of Chernobyl. I feel like this is spelled wrong though. Isn't Chernobyl spelled Chernobyle? YL? Maybe there's something around that. But yep. Looks like a Stalker game, as I think Stalker games look. And I haven't played Stalker 1, so it's kind of hard to be super interested in it. Let's see. Is there a define button? Yeah. Just in the turn here. So yeah. According to Wikipedia, it's spelled Chernobyl, Chernobyle. I guess the appropriate spelling would be here, if you can even read that. But apparently Chernobyl here is how it's spelled in Ukrainian. So, seems like they've intentionally gone with the Ukrainian spelling due to the current conflict. And it is kind of in Ukraine, I think, so it would make sense to go with the original spelling. So this may very well just be a case of Westerners misspelling a word and localizing it in the same way that we call Japan Japan, but Japanese people call Japan Nippon, and obviously we should just be calling it Nippon. Yeah, I typed up the rules for my Mahjong set to make a simplified version of Mahjong, and redid a lot of the rules to try and make it a lot closer to playing a simplified version of Hong Kong old style Mahjong, which there's many versions of Mahjong that change a lot of the words. Although even in my simplified version of Mahjong, I'm still doing away with building the wall at the beginning to draw tiles from, and instead building the wall when you discard tiles from the discard pile and building it upside down. So I'm doing something that is incredibly different from every other version of Mahjong, just to make it simpler and make it visually stand out, because obviously if you're building a wall and all the tiles are facing upward, then that looks different from a distance on than if you're building the wall and all the tiles are face down. In every other version of Mahjong, you build what's called the wall, which is just a pile of Mahjong tiles, and you draw from that and pass some tiles around from that, and then you discard in the middle of the table. In simplified Mahjong that I wrote up, the rules I made up, you instead just shuffle all the Mahjong tiles in the middle and draw from the middle and discard around the middle, building the wall at that time. So it's a faster experience, but it only makes sense in a scenario where you are not doing a lot of the passing and scoring and higher strategies that you would do in any other version of Mahjong. Yeah, Mahjong, even Hong Kong old style, is incredibly complicated. More complicated than most people would ever be willing to learn. And certainly anyone who grew up playing Mahjong has a lifetime of experience to have learned that. And certainly if you're playing Mahjong on a smartphone and it's just doing all the scoring for you, then you can play it pretty easily. But if you're trying to play against other people, the other main factor around simplified Mahjong is it's more playable amongst 2 players and or even 5 or 6 players, whereas you have to have 4 players to play any other version of Mahjong. But yeah, I'm not going to try and explain the entire rule set because it's likely I'll even change the rules again. Yeah, and I found out the Mahjong set that I got for Christmas is actually fairly small versions of the Mahjong tiles. They often, I've seen them much bigger, like 4 times as big as the ones I got, which are little mini ones. I like the mini ones though, it would take up too much table space otherwise. Moving on, back to video game news. One Period, that was the period, launches in the winter of 2023 for Japan. In Japan for the Switch and PC. This feels like this is pretty obviously a visual novel. One of these slice of life type romance visual novels, if I was to guess. Romance visual novel. Yep. The company names and the publishers probably mean a little bit more to visual novel games than other kinds of games, but you'd have to really be in the know to understand who's a good publisher and who's a good developer, and I'm not sure I do know that. A game called Silent Hill: The Short Message has been rated for the PS5 in Taiwan. This is a Korea-rated Silent Hill game reappearing with platforms confirmations. Now, the short message, we have no idea what it is. I wouldn't be surprised if it is really just a attempt at doing like the playable teaser yet again. It is, I think, incredibly important to point out that we shouldn't trust Square Enix to do anything good with Silent Hill, and I wouldn't be surprised if it is just straight up going to be an attempt at let's do PT and get the success and the press that we did with PT a second time, and then hopefully use that momentum to actually get people to buy games, buy Silent Hill games that are actually available for purchase. Still didn't link summon, but whatever. I need the duel in solo mode, so wouldn't hurt to do that. right now. We've got some solo mode stuff to try and catch up with. Let's see. We'll do this one because it's Zodiac Tri Brigade and I don't have to think too much. But yeah. The hope is that they wouldn't try to do PT or any kind of like playable teaser in general, and that there would just be, this game is an actual game, it's been released, it's going to be the new way that Silent Hill games are, and as such it is going to be a good game, a decently length of a game, and it's not going to have any major controversies around it. Even at that, you know that Square Enix is not likely to have a Kojima type director behind it. They're not going to let any individual claim any responsibility for any of the creation of the Silent Hill series, and that has always caused the Silent Hill series to be this weird series that doesn't have a real leader behind it or personality behind it, which has also caused a lot of weirdness in the variety of quality and just thematic elements in Silent Hill games and Silent Hill movies. So very much, even if they get 2 or 3 Silent Hill games made and released and they're good, they are going to be Silent Hill productions, Square Enix productions, made by Square Enix, published by Square Enix, developed by Square Enix. It is going to be the evil conglomerate that everybody hates. Now, I keep saying Square Enix. It's not Square Enix, is it? It's Konami. Replace every time I said Square Enix with Konami in the past couple of minutes. Yeah, it's going to be a Konami-made game, published by Konami, developed by Konami. And yeah, your best hope is that it's a good game and you can just separate the art from the artist, as it were, and see how this works and enjoy the game. But arguably maybe it would be better just to boycott Konami once again and hope for Konami to potentially go bankrupt, which it's not super likely that would happen, but the world of gaming may very well be better if Konami went bankrupt and the Silent Hill IP was bought by another company that would at least have a different chance of being run better. Although that's not really in any way guaranteed. You take as equally a chance that it would just be scooped up by somebody who has no interest at all of doing anything good with Konami's properties and would just like sit on it or make terrible mobile games. I feel like there was a point where Konami was somewhat decent at making games, though. So I don't feel like they were just always garbage. But I'd have to really do better research to know for certain. Alright, I'm gonna leave that one. It'll get me a couple more gems. I feel like there was something I needed to buy in the store anyways. Yeah, and I just don't want to play any of the loner decks at the moment. I should play them, but there are definitely easier things to do. Like this one. A game called Aquarium is coming to PC. It's currently available for the PS4 and Switch in Japan. And this definitely feels like this is more of a lewd visual novel. Here you have a pink-haired anime girl maid dusting with turquoise long fingernails and seeing the backs of her legs and thighs. Which, in all fairness, if you were in your average summer spot in the United States, you would see people with short pants, hot pants that would show more of the back of the leg than this image does. And certainly if you get to any kind of swimming pool bikini situation, you're going to see a lot more buttocks than what's being shown. Sure, you can make an argument that's fairly valid about the gaze of the camera, what they would call the male gaze, putting that in frame instead of actively bending over backwards to censor it, and the fact that it's animated, so the animator is actively trying to animate it that way. If you were an anthropologist from an alien race and you looked at humans, you would assume that humans have a pathological fear or cultural reference that says they never allow the backs of their bodies to be photographed, and that they were hugely ashamed of the back of their heads and the backs of their shoulders and backs, because naturally humans always face the camera when taking a photograph, when taking a picture. So there are a lot of just unconscious reasons as to why things are done the way they are, instead of catching things wild in nature. And even if you're doing like animal photography and getting wild in nature images, you're almost certainly leaving all the footage of animals facing away from the camera or animals in awkward upside down positions. You're leaving all of that on the cutting room floor. Let's see. When you don't have this timer element, and when you're playing in solo mode, it becomes incredibly easy to pull this off, particularly in these solo modes that are just in no way designed to give you any kind of challenge at all if you're playing with a different kind of deck. They're only designed for people that either don't have any decks that they've ever built, and so they don't have even one like top tier meta deck that they've built, or they just don't have cards in general. I could definitely see struggling through these solo modes if I didn't have any cards at all. But I've been free to play from day one, and I've hardly spent a significant amount of time playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, and I feel like I have a decent amount of cards. So much so that I feel sorry for anybody that actively tried to like buy cards and spent money in the game. It just seems like that would be completely unnecessary. Yeah, let's go ahead and activate this again. Let's see. So the move here would be to do more, but there's kind of no reason to do it. Like, theoretically what you would want to do is activate this ability, get 3 more cards into the graveyard, then draw another one of these, so you have 2 of those in your hand, then activate this ability and discard the other version of that. Oops. I should have clicked no there. Yeah, you'd activate this ability and then discard this, but instead what I'm gonna do is just discard this, put this face up on the field, and then get a 3, which that could have been a 4. I'll just take this one. And that should be more than enough to win. And then our last Gematsu article is the side-scrolling 2D action game Glimmer in the Mirror launches in early access for PC on January 10th, 2023. Which now, amongst all times, would be the perfect time to watch more of these trailers. This seems to visually be very similar to the game Child of Light. I didn't really like Child of Light. It was, I think Ubisoft's, in particular being the publisher, just didn't really have the feel for making that kind of game. It definitely feels like it would have been more of a, I hate to say Square Enix or Konami or Capcom, but definitely felt like Child of Light should have been published probably by Nintendo more than anything else. And if I recall correctly, I think Child of Light was just kind of incredibly difficult, and some of this platforming in this game also seems like it might be fairly difficult for a game that, well, Child of Light definitely felt like it was more of a kid's game. That being said, I don't think there is any actual direct connection between Glimmer in the Mirror, the game we just looked at, and Child of Light. It just seems like the art style is somewhat similar. Alright. Let's play this one too. And then that's gonna just leave us with the games that came out on Steam. It's Friday, so we'll probably see some adult games, although I suspect we probably won't see that many games. I have been desperately looking for a coin pusher game. Someone did actually comment on one of my YouTube shorts and said this game is terrible. I replied, thanks for your feedback. They replied, question mark. I guess they were assuming that maybe that was a automated response. It was not. Family business might be something, so I'll give that a follow on a YouTube short. But inherently, that's the kind of feedback I'd like to have, even if it is just going to be garbage, terrible, things like that. Like the games I'm pointing out on the YouTube shorts are things that don't inherently have to be good games for me to make a YouTube short on them. They just have to be somewhat interesting looking games. And there's definitely going to be a high chance of some games getting on the YouTube shorts that are bad. This was never intended to be a curated feed of this is the top 10, top 20, top 30 games ever, or that this is a curation of even good games. It's just, hey, there's a lot of games that come out on Steam. I've curated it down to something that I personally think is interesting enough to look at. And so check that out if you're interested. I think I messed up here. Yeah, oh well. That doesn't matter. Part of the problem though of playing solo mode is also that you have the reins of the game so much that if you just stop playing, it'll just sit there. I definitely want more subscribers and more subscribers more than first and foremost, obviously, but I want more comments and likes and feedback on YouTube Shorts, and I suspect you don't get a lot of that in YouTube Shorts. The idea of intentionally clicking the comment button and typing in something for something that's that short seems unlikely. And there definitely is a danger that if my YouTube channel starts to become incredibly successful via the YouTube Shorts and people are just commenting good, bad, sucks, things like that just over and over and over again on those, that I would end up spending a lot of time reading / trying to moderate, although I doubt I'd really try to moderate much. I think I've probably over 10 years deleted maybe 2 legitimate comments that were just like attacking and mean, and I probably was just being overly emotional even when I deleted those two comments. And then there's been a bunch that have been just spam. Obviously spam is a big problem on YouTube comments. But I do try to generally comment and respond to every comment, thumbs up it and heart it, and unless it's just particularly mean. And if I'm getting potentially, it could be thousands to tens of thousands views on YouTube Shorts over the course of the next year or two, and looking at how popular some of them have become so far, if there's hundreds of comments there, that's going to be a real struggle to turn that into something that I could read every comment on. Right now it's very easy to read every comment because you get one. I get one about every couple of days. How come I couldn't cancel any of those abilities? Let's see, this game, the blue. Yeah, there might be something to it as a VR game. Am I showing off VR games at this point? I guess I am as far as YouTube Shorts. So here we have an adult game, Hero Roy's Wedding. It's, let's see, flat 2D, colorful anime type girls. Yeah, at some point using the phrase flat 2D is never going to be useful if I'm still always just throwing in anime. And then in fairness, the animation style here really isn't very anime. It's not very good. It looks to me like it is very much a RPG Maker garbage game with maybe a lot of nudity in it. And in this wedding between, it seems like 3 or 4 people, 3 or 4 ladies. It's selling for $7.99. It's English and Chinese. Says 100 plus beautiful CGs, 900 plus differences, which means there's like 9 slight variations on each of the CGs, and then 100 plus special events and multiple endings. Yep. These are the kind of games that honestly have existed a lot more than people would know, in that they are RPG Maker games that they've just thrown adult content into. Let's see. Guess you start with this. But what tends to happen is that those kinds of games that are RPG Maker games that have adult content in them, they just take out the adult content because it's so ineffective and unimportant to the actual story that they feel they can make more sales just by having it selling a censored version in the non-adult portion of the Steam store. And then there's been a lot of in-between steps certainly too, where you have uncensored patches that are hidden or hidden or just not unmentioned. Problem though, of course, is none of these games are particularly good. First and foremost, the adult content's not good, and the video game content's not good, and so you're left with a weird situation where none of it is really worth purchasing. And I would gladly trade 100 bad RPG Maker adult games for one good adult RPG Maker game. And at this point, I'm pretty much not even looking at the balance as far as more Western feeling games versus more Eastern feeling games. That game supported English and Chinese, so obviously it was a Chinese developed game, I would say. But this looks terrible. It does seem very much like there's enough of a balance nowadays between the adult store listings to say that there doesn't seem to be a specific anti-Asian art style ban or anti-anime art style ban. There is definitely types of content that's still being banned. We have yet to see in the course of the year even a couple of games that have anime characters in schoolgirl outfits or anything like that. So the schoolgirl outfit, backpacks, or just college uniforms, high school uniforms, all those still seem to be completely forbidden, and they came out and said that they were forbidden, which tends to lead to most of the anime adult games having very large breast, MILF type characters in them, older looking women. And yeah, there's definitely been some level of censorship inflicted there. They've said it as much. They don't seem to be backing down on that. But there also hasn't been too much of a controversy in the past 2 or 3 months that I can recall, where there was some game of high esteem and high quality that was not allowed on Steam or struggled to get on Steam because it happened to have a character in a school uniform, high school uniform. Alright. 19 hours to link summon, I suppose. Fusion summon, link summon. And I should be able to link summon something. But you know what? I think I'll just do it off screen because I want to wrap up. Here we have a match 3 adult game with like pictures of flat 2D colorful characters. Again, you've got some elf ears, you've got some big breasts. It's very much MILF type things. This may be one character in particular with just different hairstyles, but honestly I wouldn't be surprised if this is multiple images that they licensed or stole from the internet. Not much of a game there, obviously. $1.39, claims to support quite a bit of characters. At a certain point there is definitely an argument against them even bothering to say all characters are 18 years old. I'm sure legally they're still required to do that in a lot of places, but it just means absolutely nothing at all nowadays in video games, because they're animated characters. They're not 18 years old. They're a few months old when you first drew them. That's their real age. And what they look like, it just doesn't matter at all. Imagine if all those Big Eyes paintings that were somewhat popular a few years back, imagine if you had to say all those characters were 18 years old for some weird reason. It just doesn't mean anything at all, because those Big Eyes characters are don't even look human. Or the Big Mouth characters from the Netflix series. Imagine if you had to say all those characters were 18 years old, when clearly they aren't. And clearly they don't really look like humans at all, with their giant big heads and big mouths. They really should be called big heads. This game is only in Polish, and a VR game at that, so I have to say no to that. I can't make a YouTube short around something that doesn't support English. This doesn't look like anything. We probably don't have that many games that came out on Steam, but definitely enough. I'll make a YouTube short on this. Arguably, I'm going to be putting a lot of more casual type games on YouTube shorts, which may lead to casual type games like this ending up on the follow list, which doesn't really matter. Then we have a game called As Long As It's Not Illegal, which the visuals here look very weird. Yeah. For a visual novel, I don't think you can go this wild and just drastically different. You could probably have this color palette and this art style of pink, purple, and white, but then when you drastically go with this many different colors, or almost a different color palette for each character, that's too much. And yeah, there's definitely some optimization and readability problems, and you wouldn't want to play a visual novel where you're struggling to actually read. If anything, it seems to me like the game was designed to be run at one resolution with the text here, and then it's just been stretched to a different resolution. See, $5.35. I think we have to say no to that. Here we have a game called Huge Head, which just looks like it's a asset flip horror game. Dark Screenshot Syndrome, Elements 2, Police Car Simulator. I'm gonna give this a follow just to be incredibly generous, but it's probably nothing. It's probably just an asset flip garbage game. Pot Farmer doesn't look good enough. I feel like there was already a mobile game from several years back that was pretty interesting around being a weed. Isn't it called Weed Incorporated or something? Yeah, I feel like that would have been the one you would want to play. Here we have a visual novel called Fairy Deer. Looks good enough for YouTube Spotlight. We're probably scraping the bottom of the barrel to make YouTube Spotlight. Passenger, on the other hand, looks just like text and looks like garbage. Epic Fish Head Adventure. Just looks like an asset flip RPG. Garbage game. Doterra. It's not visually polished enough. If you told me this was from the 90s, I might think about saying yes to it, but it's still not really relevant enough. I'd have to recognize this name from the 90s if it was a 90s game, and it's early access, so we know actually it's a brand new game. So there's just nothing there that makes sense. L-Pit is not visually polished enough for a platformer, frustration platformer type game like this. If this was a mobile game, these visuals would be alright, but for PC it needs to be better. Ice Battle is a hockey game. I'll give that a chance. Medieval Defense is a top-down real-time strategy game. It looks like nothing. Hentai Miko here is another adult game. If anything, it feels like they might be starting with the adult games a little bit earlier. This is a slide puzzle game with a bunch of anime girls in lewd poses, scantily clad in their kimonos or fully exposed in their kimonos. We are back to seeing screenshots that are full on uncensored and pornographic, whereas it does feel like there might have been a chance that that was being scaled down a little bit. I still don't see what I really want to see, which is just black bars over the images. Like, or too hot for steam type things over it. But yeah, you are in this weird catch-22. If they only show screenshots that don't show any nudity, then you question whether there actually is any nudity in this game being sold in the adult section. But if they do show nudity, then you are creating a scenario where a person without an individual pop-up warning is browsing Steam and seeing nudity, which is a real concern, because if I had kids on my PC and they were browsing Steams, they'd be logged into my account and they would just see it. Like, there needs to be kind of an age gate warning at the beginning of each page if that's what's going to happen, or better yet, at the beginning of each screenshot, where it's just blurred. The best way would be to automate it, blur the screenshot and say click here to see adult content, and you click and then it would unblur the screenshot while keeping you on the same page. This game looks like garbage. Is this another adult game? Yes. JB Hunter Adventure. This definitely seems like this is going to be more of a CGI 3D game. Yep. If anything, it actually looks like a decent game, even though it is asset flipping 3D models of the same quote-unquote anime girls that we see so often. So you see these incredibly skinny figure anime 3D models, and it seems like there's a photography element to it, and you're on the beach. They're in bikinis, not particularly exposed, and it seems like the idea here is to run around and take photos for people. There was a 2D version of this game, or a similar game to this, before, and they may have taken it to the 3D realm. Now what's weird certainly is you have these 3D CG images and it's just not in line with these flat 2D images being shown. So you have some weirdness there. It is really just the same body model though. Same model, different texture, bikini, different hair. Is this really an anime girl? Not really. 3D CGI is kind of antithetical. And almost always you see them in those low effort anime girls hentai shooter games. But yeah, this doesn't look terrible as an adult game. It's $3.59 English and Russian. So again, not a lot of anime or Japanese influence happening there, or at least original Japanese creation happening there. And that developer, I did check, has only made that one game. So the other game I'm thinking about that was more of a top-down adult game where you ran around and took pictures, and by doing these tasks you were then handed still images of people being topless. Like, that must have been a different developer, but they're copying the idea. Let's see, is this something you can play single player? Do I want to put this on the fault list? I feel like I'm going to give this a follow to be really generous and then make a short of it, which is also going to be really generous. And the tabs, I still have yet to figure out on Firefox, as far as just how to move the tabs around. I'll make a YouTube short around this. It's going to be a lot of Christmas themed YouTube shorts that come out in the next couple of months for no reason. If anything, I'm probably making too many YouTube shorts. The clown, I'm going to say no to. Don't blame you. I'm going to give this a follow, but not a short. I may find myself, this is the same person, isn't it, with the wizard as the clown, just asset flipping garbage. Yeah, it's the same person. Flooding steam. Aircraft pushback simulator. That's too. My grandparents' Christmas. My grandparents' Christmas mystery. No, this has too much dark screenshot syndrome. This is not a terrible image, but every other screenshot here is pretty bad. Yeah, I don't think this is anything. Don't think this is anything. Don't think this is anything. Alright, and next we have another adult game called Paradise Cleaning, Conquering Married Women Through Sex. Well, in this case there is, as the video immediately started playing, there is a costume that this MILF-like character is wearing that is a schoolgirl outfit, although it really is more a fetish version of a school outfit with it being incredibly short and see-through. Yeah, these screenshots are incredibly explicit. It is kind of a match the tiles game, but the tiles aren't in square orderly fashion. They're just randomly placed over images of explicit images of this one character, so you're just like clicking, I think, more than anything. Honestly, I don't think it's even match the tiles. I think you're just clicking to clean off the screen with a random collection of things you click on. Yeah. Maybe you need to switch. Yeah. You have to switch the item you're using. So there's like a broom for red items and a broom for yellow items and a brush for red items, which what's the difference between a brush and a broom? And then a mop for blue items. So there is a little bit of strategy here. I don't even know what you'd really call this. But yeah, it's a clicker, strategy clicker might be a good description. Where you're cleaning off the image. So it is a good description of what it is. 59 cents. It supports English, Chinese, and Japanese. It's not a bad game. It has 20 stages, 20 adult CGs, 11 achievements. It honestly is a decent thought if you wanted something that isn't just a garbage tile puzzle game that tend to be a little too slow, you're going to get a lot more action here. I wish there was even a single screenshot I could show here to show it better, but every screenshot really is just explicit. I guess maybe we could show this one real quick. But yeah, you have these different brooms, and so you'd be on broom and you'd click all the yellows, and then you'd go to mop and you'd click all the blues, and it kind of feels like a mobile game. And really, this is the kind of game I'd want to see more of on the adult storefront. It's just games that actually feel like games first and happen to have adult content second, versus games that are adult content first and then really don't have anything else that they're interested in. So it's just a visual novel that's terrible, or a terrible gameplay mechanic that's terrible. Let's see, the next game is Paradise Cleaning Married Woman Cosplay Life, which it's basically the exact same game with different images. That being said, it's 59 cents, so you buy both games. Yes, they are floating Steam with the same game, but you buy both games, and then you would have 40 stages combined, 40 adult CGs, and 22 achievements. And for 60 cents, that's not really asking too much. I would say the outfits in Married Woman Cosplay Life are a little less extreme, but like just in that they're not as high fashion or weird looking, and the screenshots maybe are a little less explicit. It almost feels like this game would have been the first one, and the second game is going even more extreme. Alright, next game I can actually show on YouTube. Sadness of Valor looks like nothing. Epic Assassin is almost certainly an Assassin's Creed ripoff. And yeah, it doesn't look good enough. Auto Sim 2 looks like nothing. East Lake Pond looks like nothing. Let's see, Home Mesa. Looks like nothing. It wasn't worth it to really even read the name of that one. And that brings us to our GameDeveloper.com articles. We've already talked about Yuji Naka being indicted over insider trading case at Square Enix. China has granted publishing privileges to Gwent, Valorant, and more games. This approval by China's game regulators marks the first time the country has approved international games in over a year. So it's been an entire year, and we're at the end of this year, in which any foreign game has been approved. And you can definitely tell that Gwent and Valorant are particularly old games at this point. Gwent is just about to be abandoned and shut down. I don't think Valorant is any spring chicken either. And this highlights the problem of the speed of video games, or the speed of business in general, versus the speed of censorship and straight up just market manipulation by China. Yeah, Elden Ring was 2022's longest, most completed and unbeaten game, according to GameDeveloper.com, if you want to check that out. And then Capcom, fairly quickly, as I understood it, shut down fan remakes of Resident Evil 1 and Resident Evil Code Veronica. Honestly, I don't know if this person had even done a single line of code. I'm not sure if even a single line of code had been done for these projects, more than they just had announced it publicly enough that they would get an email. And as I understood the story, one department in Capcom sent like a nice email, and then months later a completely different department sent a official cease and desist like letter from a lawyer. Honestly, I think a lot of this is very possibly a case of much ado about nothing, and very possibly somebody asking for permission instead of begging for forgiveness. Would have been much better if this fan project was going to get off the ground and succeed, which many fan projects don't. We only really see the ones that do succeed and get finished. It would have been much better if they had just worked on it in secret and then had a close to finished product before they even announced anything. But it does when you say Code Veronica and Resident Evil fan remakes are officially canceled by Capcom, that really is just passing the blame on Capcom and not owning to the fact that you're abandoning your ambitions just because you're afraid of being sued. Which, in all fairness, a fan-made remake would be copyright infringement, almost certainly, versus a fan-made mod that would just change the visuals. So the Resident Evil 4 fan-made mod, for instance, was totally capable of being released and is totally playable at the moment. So, but part of the reason why that fan-made HD texture mod makes sense and isn't copyright infringement is that they aren't just copying the same art whole cloth. They are making different art, different textures that are similar. But also Capcom didn't successfully shut down those projects. There is definitely a chance that RE1 is getting remade again, which would make sense. And that'll be awkward, certainly, to have your third or fourth remake of RE1, but whatever. And Code Veronica, they need to do something called Code Veronica in the remake series. Otherwise, people are just going to constantly ask for it. So that probably will happen too. Plus, Capcom is going to run into this problem where they're going to run out of things to remake and sell otherwise, anyways, as they are going to really have to struggle after Resident Evil 4 to justify remaking Resident Evil 5 or Resident Evil 6. They probably still wouldn't be able to remake Resident Evil 7 anytime soon, and remaking remakes doesn't make any sense. So the last things they're going to have are remaking 1 again and Code Veronica. We've already talked about Sakurai saying he's semi-retired. Definitely feels like he's had some work done on his face. Like, he looks too young even for a Japanese man for that appearance. And then here's that story. Nintendo releases a patch for security exploits in old 3DS and Wii U games. If you're wondering why some old Nintendo games get randomly updated recently, this is why. The exploit would have allowed hackers to take over users' consoles while playing specific titles. Almost certainly, I don't think hackers are interested in taking over Wii U or 3DS titles. What they mean, and they're trying not to say, is hackers would take over the consoles and then jailbreak them so that they could play ROMs and unlicensed or unlicensed software, fan-made software on the 3DS and Wii U. Which honestly, that makes the 3DS and Wii U more interesting to me than they ever have been up until this point. And I still am not interested in owning a 3DS and Wii U. Square Enix will end the Bravely Default mobile games in February of 2023, which feels like that game hasn't been out that long, barely a year after it launched. So yeah, Square Enix is abandoning mobile and moving on to the next thing that they'll abandon. Elden Ring and Modern Warfare 2 were amongst Steam's best sold games of 2022, which It's a shame Modern Warfare 2 is still the main seller, but yeah, that's how it goes. It's interesting, certainly, to see Elden Ring succeed so well as something that I would generally have said is more of a niche game. It obviously isn't a niche anymore when you're talking the being a platinum bestseller. The full list here is probably more interesting, and Lost Ark, Dying Light 2, Apex Legend, Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel taking up a role, although Yu-Gi-Oh! Is also free, PUBG Battlegrounds, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, Naraka Blade Point is an interesting one, CSGO, always a big seller on Valve, big money maker, Destiny 2, Monster Hunter Rise, and Dota 2, and then under the gold category you have FIFA 24, 23, Warframe, Cyberpunk 2077, Ready or Not, I don't even know what that one is. I think I've heard of it, but I can't remember. God of War at 2018 sold very well, considering it is just new to Steam, but not new really in any other way. Forza being a big seller is kind of a surprise. Rainbow Six Siege being a big seller is not a big surprise. GTA 5 still a big seller. War Thunder, I don't even know about that one. So yeah, some big numbers there. Let's see, we've got a VR archery game as far as the fall list cleanup that I'll just leave on the fall list. We're into the B's now. Polygon looks like it's a Super Monkey Ball clone from May. I'll give it some more time, but it's probably leaving. Whereas Ball of Runner here is a Marble Runner Super Monkey Ball clone that is going off the fall list. Ball of Frog. Yep. I guess this is good enough. 74%. Honestly, I think I'm going to say no. And you know the best reason to say no here is because you have the Binding of Isaac image here, and this is not from any of the creators of the Binding of Isaac at all. So they've just stolen that art. So, yeah. I'm not going to support that. Like, yeah. That very well may have been why that was on the fall list in the first place. It's just to see if it would get flagged for stolen art. And yeah, it's fairly obvious Steam just does not do anything around that. Ball Adventure here looks visually interesting, but it would need more time. Ballads and Romances. I think this was one of these games that I had hoped would have been a lot better, but it's already mixed reviewed, so it's got to leave the fall list. Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance. Yeah, at this point, I think Baldur's Gate games deserve to be on the wish list. I may never very well buy them, but they have a historical relevance enough that if somebody was going to gift me the games to, then I would say yes. Partial nudity in Baldur's Gate 3. Early access from 2020. Wow. Why is this game still in early access? Yeah, I feel like I remember seeing this trailer in 2020. Yeah. Gross. Well, whatever. Yeah, I definitely remember seeing this trailer. This was rated very positively, but it is also abusing the early access tag, and see, that's inherently probably why I wasn't putting any of the other Baldur's Gate games on Steam. This looks very colorful, but it's poorly reviewed, so I'm gonna say no to Baldo, the Guardian Owls. And then Bakamatsu is some Ultimate visual novel that's mixed reviewed. This looks like one of those older, early 90s visual novels. I wonder why it's so poorly reviewed. Romance is basically non-existent in the game. After finishing 3 routes in the game, I find myself bored, not caring about the characters. If you want to play a romance story about Shinsegumi, I suggest playing Haku Ouki. Well, yep. Amongst the fans of visual novels, they are not liking this game, so it's gotta go. And yep, that would be the faultless cleanup. So let's do a duel live to get that daily quest done. And while that's playing, I will look in my my Twitter feed to see if there's actually any video game news on the Twitter feed, which it probably isn't. Cyan, the makers of Myst, is doing this whole Lex Ember. They've been doing it this whole month and I've been ignoring it, where they're putting out tweets showing off dunny words, like different language words from the Dunny language, their made-up language, and probably some of their other made-up languages from other cultures in the Myst series. Doesn't really mean much to anybody who, other than people who are fans of made-up languages, which that would be Myst fans, I think. A lot of Myst fans. That's about the only consistent thing that has been posted to Twitter lately. In a lot of ways, I do think Elon Musk has been fairly quiet in the past week as far as tweeting nonsense, and in fact the most recent drama, or somewhat drama, around Twitter is that some terrible YouTuber I've never heard of was apparently wanted and attacked that Greta Thunberg little girl, climate activist lady, little girl on Twitter, and she clapped back at him, and in his clapback to her clapback, or in his original tweet, he had like a specific type of pizza box, and it was like a pizza box from a Romanian company, so the Romanian police knew he was in Romania, and I guess in general just kind of knew where he would be, because he seems to be a human trafficker and really rich, and so they knew where to get him at that very second, which is often what the police love to know, is just like, can we find this person now, or are we going to show up at their house and they're going to be gone, hiding somewhere else? So they were able to find him, this person, and apparently his brother, I think, and arrest them both. So that's got to be the worst way to go, certainly, as far as the worst way to go as far as doing something stupid on Twitter, to clap back at a little girl or try to attack a little girl who's kind of beloved online, and end up getting arrested and your brother arrested. The Texas Pinball Festival is gonna run between January 1st and the 16th. No, wait. The This Week in Pinball Awards final voting, the Twippies, This Week in Pinball, Twippies.com, is happening between January 1st through 16th. So, the Texas Pinball Festival is somewhat around the corner, which, yeah, it's in an awkward time to have these events. Yep. Yeah, and I'm scrolling down way more than I need to on my Twitter feed. There really is just nothing happening on Twitter, or nothing happening in general. I probably won't accomplish too much over the weekend. Ideally, I will finish Kirby in the Forgotten Land and then start to maybe play Metroid Prime. And honestly, I need to schedule videos too, and I need to probably play some YouTube content also. But if I could finish Metroid Dread, not Metroid Prime, and Kirby in the Forgotten Land at the same time, that would be somewhat convenient. But it would also just put me back in a weird position where I only have 1 or 2 Nintendo Switch games that I own or even want to play. Alright, well, that's going to be it for the stream. The stream was quite the disaster, more than usual. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second. And frankly, at this point, asking you to do that is really just asking for charity. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and get me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.